Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Kikuo. Kikuo. Kara 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 Dokara. That is a title. This is an 8-minute song. We are looking at a remastered version of it. I do have a translation, possibly. It's in the title of the song, Emptiness, Emptiness, Emptiness of Emptiness. So, yeah. That's what we're in store for today. Let's dive into this and see what Kikuo is bringing to the table today. Oh, it's Vocaloid. Those half-step walkdowns are quite a bit distinct against the brighter poppy sound of this. Very cool layering there. A cowbell. There's the drop. It's very cool how we have one vocal center, but we have ornamental vocals to the sides. Layering up again. Oh! kind of stuff will always impress me. Sample-based melody Hockets. Shifting to the threes. Yeah, that was slick. There's an interesting waviness, a really quick shifting of volume on these. Very dreamlike, again with the reverb, the waviness. Kind of maddening. Yeah, I'm ready for it to stop. Why is it still going? Thank you. Are these sounds over here? Alright, cool. Now we're done. Golly, that went on longer than it needed to. Alright, don't click away. At least not until you learn this one thing right here. If you're new to the channel, and if you're not new to the channel, maybe you haven't heard this term before, I think the coolest thing about this song is the instrumental breakdowns in it. And we're going to touch on the more traditional verse chorus stuff going on too, and some of the composition behind the Vocaloid part. But I really want to focus on this. If this is the only takeaway, if you're going to leave the video, just wait until, give me 5 minutes to explain this concept. In music, we have a term that describes multiple instruments taking turns to play a larger idea. It's called a Hocket, H-O-C-K-E-T. That's exactly what's going on here in these lengthy instrumental parts where there's like 50 samples coming together to create this cool instrumental breakdown. When one sample makes one sound, another sample takes up 2 beats, and then this sample makes a different sound, and then there's a random scream here, and you hear doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, ah! Right? That's a Hocket. That's your brain putting all of these disparate pieces together and saying, oh, they actually form this one unified idea here. Even though they are all completely different sounds, completely different everything, they are put together in a way that feels melodious, and your brain can interpret that. Now, this is an exceptionally extreme case of Hocket. When when you look at it in more traditional areas, you might have 2 or 3, maybe 4 different sounds. Maybe trumpets and trombones and sax will take turns playing a couple of notes each in a melody line, and it kind of cycles back around to each other. You know, the trumpet takes a couple, trombone takes a couple, sax plays like 4, trumpet plays like 2 more, trombone plays like 3 more, and you get this same feeling, but it's with a much smaller palette of sounds. But this is like taken to the extreme. What if we made a Hocket out of like 50 samples? And this is what I was saying during the reaction. Like, this is incredibly impressive to me. Partly because it's sort of in that same realm that electronic music tends to impress me, is that you have an infinite color palette to choose from. How do you pick sounds from that? How do you have something in your head and you're like, oh, I want this sample from this meme, and I want to go make this sound with my, analog synth, and then I want to take this scream sample from this one anime I watched this one time and I thought was really cool. And like, how do you just have this mental library of sounds to then put together and it just works? Like, electronic music's infinite sounds already intimidates me. I am much more at home. Like, give me an orchestra, give me like 15 distinct sounds I can pick from. I'll make some beautiful music out of that. But electronic artists making their own sounds in general already blows my mind. But then having this like mental library and saying, I have samples and I want to put them together in a way that sounds like it works, even though they have nothing to do with each other in their original context. It blows me away. And something like this continuing on as long as it does, and there is repeats, it does end up looping, but it's still a rather lengthy idea comprised entirely of what sounds to me like brand new samples back to back with shifting rhythms. Some are cut off, some are left to extend, some are actually artificially extended, it sounds like. Almost as if it loops itself as part of this melody. And like, how does one's mind work in that direction? Electronic musicians and producers are... It's a totally different side of music composition, and I find it almost magical in the way that as much music knowledge as I have, I am still... They're magicians. I don't know their magic trick. I don't even know how to peer behind the curtain because I don't know where the curtain is in their digital world. And it's super impressive to listen to stuff like this on the purely, production side of it. All right. If you don't want to listen to the rest of the analysis, I'm fine with you clicking off here. I know a lot of people click off after the reaction, though. The analytics say that. I want people to know more music stuff. So like, Hocket is a really good term. Think about it in the future. Use it to impress your friends. We're going to move into some less theoretical stuff and just observations I've made now. One thing I really liked about this was the use of the Vocaloid, not just as the center vocalist. As I pointed out in the second chorus, I think it was, we actually had them panned out to the sides as well. At the beginning of the chorus, they would come together and you would have this really nice, beautiful harmony between these 3 voices. And we would get that for, I don't know, like 6 or 7 syllables, probably about the length of a bar. And then past that, they just started singing and humming kind of what sounded like ad-libs, just creating harmony on the outside. 2 totally distinct parts from each other, but certainly not singing anything like what the center vocalist is. And it's kind of a light counterpoint. Oh, okay, so here's another term. Didn't think I was going to bring this up. Counterpoint is just 2 or more melodies existing at the same time. Another term is counter melody. I'm not a big fan of that, but it is another term that's used for it. But we have these 2 parts. They are moving. They are distinct. They're doing their own things, but they are just moving a little slower. I kind of want to put them more in the harmonic, atmospheric, chord progression area of things, but there are melodious elements to what they're doing, so maybe a light form of counterpoint, in which case that would be 3 voices here, the main vocal and the 2 supporting vocals who are doing their own things. I love this. I thought that was fantastic. It gave us the harmony when we needed it to really have these strong starts to the beginning of these phrases, but it also allowed that sound not to completely dissipate. I think that the chorus without those voices out on the side would sound a bit empty. And sure, you could put any number of instruments there for those same roles and it would probably generally work, but it allows the vocals to stick around for the entire time so that when they come back for the harmony, it doesn't sound like they come out of nowhere and then form this great chord and then leave. They've always been there. It feels natural for them to come together for this chord and then to go back there to their own ways. And it just feels like a very natural movement through the chorus in that regard. So I thought that was a very cool addition there. This is a rhythmically heavy track. It doesn't matter if it's atmosphere, if it's texture, if it's chords, it doesn't matter if it's the main melody, if it's a digital instrument or the vocals, which I guess the vocals are digital too. Everything is focused on these really short notes. And it's like everything creates this feeling of momentum and movement just through the fact that nothing stands still. This is such an energetic track. And the thing is, too, is I thought it was pretty moving. I thought there was a nice bit of acceleration and momentum in the first half. And then we hit that accelerando in the middle of the track, which just means speeding up. Dude, this is just a good day for music vocab. Accelerando is a speeding up of the tempo. And we hit that point when it was just like random sounds. I don't remember what was going on. It just kept getting faster and faster and faster. I was like, okay, the bridge, we're going to speed up. We're going to do some bridge stuff. And then if we bring the song back at the end, we're going to ramp the energy back down, but we don't. The final choruses are at the new tempo. I really like that idea. It gives the song a sense of evolution to it, where it isn't just, okay, the bridge is doing something new, but we are returning back to the chorus, so we need to return back to the chorus tempo, where it almost feels a bit more segmented. The chorus is this speed, the bridge is this speed, but comes up. When we come back to the chorus, we need to bring the speed back down. No, this is cause and effect. The song's sped up, so if we return to something, it's going to be at this new speed. And it creates this feeling of consistency and fluidity throughout the song. It has storytelling elements to it. Why did we speed up? And why do we stick with it? I'm really looking forward to the lyrics on this, primarily because of the themes I'm getting on this track. I had mentioned during the beginning that we had these half-step walkdowns, that dun 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 dun. Just like if you're on a piano, you just move to the next note, whether it's white or black. And you always make each little step, never skipping a single key. And those are your half-step movements. That's chromatic. Chromatic is, dang, this is a good day for terminology. Chromatic is just a scale that has every single note in it. And so it doesn't really have any unique characteristics. Major scales have a specific evolution of notes where you use specific intervals between each note to craft a specific feeling. Major chords, major scales tend to be very positive. Minor key tends to be a bit somber or sorrowful. Augmented tends to have a bit of tension to it. So we have ways of describing feelings based on the collections of notes. Out of the 12 notes that we have, we might pick 5 to 7 or 8 of them, and they're going to create a specific feeling based on those specific notes. But chromatic is all 12 keys. It doesn't really have an emotional identity, but it's very easy to pick out. Half-step movement is, at least once you get used to it, you just oh, yeah, they're working in chromatic. It's just a gut feeling you have. It's a feeling of everyness, of everything. I think that's what I meant to say. Everyness. We're just making new words here. This descending feeling here is actually used in a lot of madness motifs and in music that tends to showcase waning physical health. We'll put it that way. Especially the descending element, it's falling rather than rising, which feels like a spiral or a descent. It feels like somebody's mental health is just slowly slipping away from them. We actually lean into a bit of a dark circus vibe in like minute 6 or so, coming back into the final chorus there. I think that also is creating a bit of this, dwindling mental health. But there's also, towards the end of the song, more and more instruments that become wavy. This was done primarily, I think, with a very quick fluctuation of volume. So it feels like the sound is quickly and rapidly phasing in and out. That also showcases to me a bit of, sonic, like mental health deterioration through sonic storytelling. And it could be that this person is slowly going insane. And the ramping up of the speed in the middle of the track, I mentioned, the accelerando might have a narrative purpose to it, especially since it continues on throughout. Even as we leave the bridge, we stick with that faster tempo. What if this is an acceleration of the deterioration? And that's kind of where I'm going with this. And it makes me revisit some of the other ideas I've talked about, the vocals being split. Why do we have one main vocalist, but also that same vocal sound off on the side just doing their own things? It's too much happening, honestly. But it could just be not necessarily like split personality or anything like that, but just having your mind in a lot of different places at once. And when you get to a specific topic, everything locked in. You get that really nice chord, you get that synergy in your mind, and then your mind scattered again. And you're just thinking about all sorts of different things. Maybe this is stressful. There's anxiety to it that I think showcases in the music too, of the constant rhythmic elements to it, and not really ever stopping or breathing in this track. There's no point where we can rest at all. It's constant escalation. And all of this just, I think it works well at presenting something of psychosis in a way. So that's where I'm at with this track. That's what I got out of it musically. There's probably a lot of fine details I missed or that I'm not talking about here. It is a rather dense track and it is long. So yeah, maybe on a second listen, I'd be able to talk about more specifics to it. But I think on the general, this is masterfully produced. It's fantastic storytelling throughout. At least I got a narrative. It might not be the right narrative. We look at the lyrics and I might be like totally far off. Who knows? Well, I guess we'll find out in a second when I hit the lyrics, but I got a narrative out of it, whether it's the right one or not, which is a good sign. If music, if it doesn't tell me a story, that's fine. Sometimes you just need entertainment music, right? But I have always kind of been of the mind that if you can tell me a story, if I can put pieces together on a first listen and figure out something that connects everything, you're probably writing some pretty good art. And then there's just the technical side of things on this that blow me away, all the producer stuff. So yeah, Kikuo, dude, fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. This is wild. Let me hit some lyrics on this and we'll wrap the video up after that. All right, so this is an interesting track. I think I was going in the right direction, and having read the lyrics, I actually have some comments to make about other parts of the music side of things, but we'll get there after or during those specific stanzas. Huge shout out though to Releska.com. I'll have a link in the description for this specific translation. They even mentioned a little bit of context on this. They called it a final boss song translation because there's so much onomatopoeia in it. It's challenging to figure out, what exactly is being said, and particularly because of the title or where the title comes from. Kara Kara does translate to emptiness, but it also indicates laughter and rattling and a bunch of other things based on context. So there are parts of the song where that phrase will get translated to different parts, whether it is an onomatopoeia or a specific sound of like laughing or cackling or the word emptiness. And this is wild to me. It shows a lot of interesting wordplay that might get lost in translation, not just because of how the words translate, but because it's more of a cultural thing. Onomatopoeia is interesting because, back when I was younger, less exposed to the world, I suppose, definitely pre-internet times, the sound of a sound was just the sound. Cats meowed. But it was wild to me when I was in my teen years or something, and realized that different cultures, different regions, different groups of people have different onomatopoeia for specific sounds, and that's very cool. And it makes a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things. But it does make something like this kind of difficult to translate, because the onomatopoeia, the sounds that they make to represent specific real sounds, isn't the way that we would represent, or isn't the way I would represent them in my language from my part of the world. So it's kind of difficult to translate that properly in a way that captures what I think is really important here, is the musical element of these sounds. And that's going to get lost. The rhyme scheme, the phonetic element to it. Yeah, this sounds like it would have been a nightmare to translate, especially if you're trying to go for something a bit less literal and more adapting, bringing it from Japanese to English, not just in, directly translating it literally, but trying to make it fit in English the same way it originally fit in Japanese. So anyways, into the lyrics here, enough of that context there. This seems to be a song about somebody who's trying to sleep and bells are playing. Starting with just one, then a couple, and then many, and they can't sleep. And they slowly sink into this mental exhaustion. And they start to say some wild things by the end of the track. And I think this mental deterioration is, it's exactly what I caught on to in some of the musical ideas, in the ramping up of the tempo, in the, careening speed that we had at the end of the track. It starts out, says it's a boring night, so jingle, jingle, jingle. They're ringing. They ring from head to toe. That annoying twisted instrument crookedly. Ring, ring, rattle, rattle, whistling wind, clink, clink, clip, clop will play. Emptiness, the emptiness of emptiness rattling away. Since my body is empty, the small bells are ringing, rattling from my body. This is interesting because it seemed to start out as an external sound that this person has slowly become to take as an internal sound. They feel they are empty inside, and so the bells ring. And I think this is an interesting theme in general. We'll explore it a little bit later as we get into more of the lyrics and we see more of this type of perspective taking place. It says, spinning round and round in my empty body, the distorted sounds won't stop. I won't rest. I can't sleep. Ring, 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 la, 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 rat-a-tat-a-tat-a. We, the empty ones, sing charmingly, making bell-like sounds. We, the crybabies, are like an unsettled flute that's gathering up tears. There's cackling, there's laughter. It says, how fun. It says, I'll always be here, and the dancers rustle inside my empty body. 1, 2, 4, 16, 100. There's even more than that. The bells are twined around the dancers' feet, arms, and necks. Their noises are echoing. Bigger, they strike together. This was something I totally forgot about until I was reading the lyrics, but you remember in the bridge, we had the stacking up of layers, starting from something a bit smaller, raising the volume too, but also bringing in so many different sounds. I would wager this was about that time. This feeling of not just a couple of bells, but sounds upon sounds stacking on each other, creating this wall of noise that refuses to allow you to sleep. Then we have just a bunch of sound making, stanza upon stanza upon stanza of sounds. I don't know how to interpret this other than the narrator finally breaking from reality and going mad and speaking in tongues. I don't know. It wraps up saying, I'm scared of the emptiness. You and I are calling, calling, calling. We're broken. We're laughing. We're broken and we're laughing. How fun. It's all because it's empty. Our bodies are empty. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. To me, this song is about someone who has mental issues. They need to talk to a therapist about stuff, but they don't. They just deal with it. Maybe they have lots of hobbies. Maybe they're always on the go, always hanging out with friends, something to occupy their minds. But then you lay down for sleep and your brain goes a mile a minute, trying to unpack all of this stuff that you really need to, and you're not stopping it at this moment. You can't stop it. You're tired. The brain needs to handle this. And you kind of sink into a little bit of a depression. You feel empty and hollow. There's a deep depression welling up inside of you, and it won't let you sleep. And despite it being empty and silent, it's being represented as a noise because typically silence is how people sleep. Noise is how people stay awake. It's the noisy neighbor, the pulling the pillow around your ears, trying to rest while there's a jackhammer going on outside or something like that. The cliches of this. A silence so loud, it's deafening. And I think that's where a lot of the ideas of the emptiness come from. The bells are just a sonic representation of this depression, this sorrow that keeps them awake at night. A moment of putting your guard down and allowing your brain to just be because you're too exhausted to put up the mental blocks, only for the brain to say, all right, we got stuff to deal with. And the depression and the sorrow, the feeling of emptiness, won't let you rest despite how tired you are. And I really think that while this feels like it is just a single night, maybe this is just a really bad night, but it could just be a cycle of restless evenings, getting progressively and progressively worse as you're getting less and less good, restful sleep every night. And really beginning to affect your psyche. Not necessarily in a way of psychosis, but just bringing this, this depression into your world and making everything feel just a little bit worse, a little bit more off kilter. You can't keep it at bay anymore, and you're not getting good sleep, which, brains do funny things when they don't get rest. Just try to go a couple days without sleep. It's not good. There's lots of documented science about the effects on the brain of lacking sleep. And this is just the compounding of that. The mental fatigue plus the emotional fatigue, creating physical fatigue, and all of it coming together into a disastrous combination. And explored through a wonderful metaphor of a deafening silence. Dude, it's so good. Each of the bells, I think, is a small little micro issue they need to deal with, and it continues to stack up. Just metaphorically strong. Now, I don't know if this is the authorial intent on this track. These are just my thoughts, though, on Kikuo's Kara 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 no Kara. Let me know what you thought of this. If there's anything that stood out to you, if there's anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own interpretation or perspective on it, please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, which is nothing like this. You can find a link to the Discord server, ways to support the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.